This is Ashley Gerard, and I am recording my student assessment video number 3. So this assessment is an assessment of the musculoskeletal system, and so I am going to start by visually inspecting the alignment, contour, and symmetry of the muscles and bones of the body. And so I'm looking at the shoulders, arms, elbows, wrists, and fingers, the spine, the hips, legs, knees, ankles, and toes. Everything appears to be in alignment, well contoured and symmetrical. And so then I'm going to palpate all of the joints that I just mentioned. And so I'll start with the shoulder. And I'm palpating for any swelling or tenderness. And so I'm doing the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, and the finger joints, and I'm just looking for any swelling. Nothing appears to be abnormal, and so I'll move on to palpating the hips. And the knee. And I've asked the patient to alert me if he feels any tenderness. The knees and the ankles and the joints in the toe. Okay, everything appears to be fine. And so now I'm going to start with the cervical neck, looking at range of motion. And so I'm going to ask the patient to make several movements. So I'm going to ask you to bend your head forward and then extend it back. And then laterally, ear to shoulder, side to side. And then rotate around. All right, the patient appears to have full range of motion. And so now we will test the strength of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And so I'm going to ask the patient to flex his head forward against resistance, okay? And bend his head back, and then move it from side to side against resistance. He appears to have full strength. And so now we'll move on to the assessment of the shoulders. And so for range of motion of the shoulders, I'm going to ask the patient to flex his arms up and then extend them back. And then internally rotate and externally rotate so internally and then externally rotate the shoulders. And then abduct and adduct the arms. And the other one. And the patient appears to have full range of motion. And so now we'll test the strength of the shoulder muscles, and I'll start with the bicep muscle by asking the patient to flex his arm against resistance. Okay, and the other side. Okay, and then we'll test the tricep by having the patient extend the arm against resistance. Okay, and then we'll test the deltoid by having the patient move the arm outward against resistance. Okay. All right, very good. Patient appears to have full strength in the shoulders. So now we'll move on to the elbows. And so we'll assess range of motion of the elbows by having the patient extend and bend the elbows and then turn his hand palms over. Okay, and we've already tested the strength of the elbows when we tested the strength of the shoulders. So I will then move on to the wrists, hands, and fingers. And so first we'll assess range of motion with those, and I'll do that by having the patient spread his fingers and bring them together, make a fist, touch his thumb to the tip of every finger and to the base of the pinky. Okay. I'll then have him bend the fingers down at the metacarpopharyngeal joint and up, so bend here, and then bend down and up at the wrist, and then palms up and move laterally. Okay. And he appears to have full range of motion, so I'll move on to assessing the strength of this area. And so first I'm going to have the patient bend his wrist down against resistance, and then up, okay, and down, and up. Okay, I'm going to have him do the same thing with his fingers, and so bend the fingers up, okay, and then down against resistance. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to have the patient spread his fingers against resistance and bring them together while I hold them apart. And I'm going to have the patient grip my fingers to assess his strength. Okay. And he appears to have full strength in this region. And so now I'll move on to my assessment of the hips. And so I'll ask the patient to lay supine. And so I'm going to have this to test range of motion of the hips. I'm going to have the patient lift one leg while keeping the knee straight. All right, and then if you can flex that knee and bring it to your chest. Okay, and then if you can put that foot on the opposite knee and bend your knee towards the ground. All right, and then the other direction. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing with the other leg. If you leg up, okay, and then bend it and bring it to your chest. And then foot on the opposite knee and bend it down in the other way. Okay, and I'm going to have him with his legs flat, adduct the leg, so bring the leg out. All right, and then the other one as well, as much as you can. Okay. And so then, and then I'm gonna have you stand real quick. And if you can move your legs behind you.
That?
Mm-hmm.
Or back?
Yeah, just legs to the side like that. Okay. And now you can lay back down. And I'm going to test strength of the hips by having the patient lift and lower the leg against resistance. So you can lift your, okay. And now lower it. Okay. And then lift. Okay. And lower it. Okay. And move your leg outward. Okay. And then inward. Okay. Move it out. And then in. Okay. So the patient appears to have a full range of motion of the hips. And so now I'm going to have the patient stand. And I'm going to move on to assessing the spine. And so I'll have you to the side so I can stand behind you. I'm going to have him bend backward. All right. And bend forward. All right. And then rise. And as the patient rises, I'm inspecting the spine for any deviation, assessing for scoliosis, which does not appear to be present. I'm going to have the patient go to the side and then to the other side and then rotate the hips. Okay, and he appears to have full range of motion of the hips. And so now, real quick, I'm going to pan the camera around to ensure that no SETI aids have been used. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to have the patient stand and I'm going to assess his heel to toe gait. So I'm going to ask you to walk in a straight line heel to toe. And I'm assessing just for balance and coordination. Okay, very good. And now I'm going to assess for the Romberg sign. So I'm going to have the patient stand with his feet the same width as his shoulders and close his eyes. And I see minimal swaying, which is a normal sign. And so then I'm going to have the patient perform alternating hand movements. So you can open your eyes. If you can have your hands out and just back Brooklyn.
You're in the way of the camera.
Okay, so I'm going to have just turn your palms up, and then down. Now a little faster, and a little faster. Okay, very good. And now I'm going to do the finger to nose test. I'm going to have the patient close his eyes and put his arms straight out to the sides. And then if you could touch your nose with your right hand. Okay, and then with your left. Okay, very good. And so then we'll move on. You can sit back down. We'll move on to sensory perception. I'm going to place an object in the patient's hands with his eyes closed and ask him to identify it. So if you could close your eyes. Okay, can you identify what's in your hands?
Is it a nickel?
Yes. Okay, and now the other one. Keep your eyes closed. Can you identify that?
A key.
Very good. And now I'm going to assess for graphesthesia. I'm going to, with the tip of this, write a number in the patient's hand and ask him to identify it.
3.
Okay, and then the other hand.
4.
Okay, very good. And so now I'm going to move on to touch perception. So with the patient's eyes still closed, I'm going to touch various sites on the body and ask him to identify this, and then just say now when he identifies a sensation.
Now. 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 Now.
space recognition, I'm going to hold the patient's great toe and move the foot into different configurations and ask him to identify the position his foot is in.
My foot's pointed down like a ballerina. Now it's up. To the left. To the right.
Okay.
Up. Down. Up. Right. Left.
Okay, very good. All right, and so finally, I'll move on to assessing the deep tendon reflexes. I'm going to start with the biceps reflex, and so I'm going to support the patient's bicep, place my fingers over that. Okay, and I'm looking for the twitch of the muscle. Okay, and now I'm going to assess the triceps reflex. Okay. Okay. And now the brachioradialis tendon. Okay. And now the patellar reflex, if you could sit back so your feet are. Okay. And then finally, I'm going to test for ankle jerk. Here, I want to put your feet this way. Oh,
All the way up.
yeah. Okay. And that completes my assessment of the musculoskeletal system.